Alrighty. Welcome to Fuquay Buddhist Temple of San Antonio. I want to thank the temple for allowing us to use this space here for this Buddhism 101. I also want to thank the abbot, Master Tik Fuquan, and also Master Tik Quan Tri, who guide us and provide teachings for us occasionally and during the services. They've been very helpful, very instrumental for keeping this group active and alive. I also want to thank my fellow co-leader, Leon Bryant, who, without him, I couldn't do my work, and so it's really great to have a partner in crime in Leon. And then my name is Alex Quiros. Just go by Alex. For the Buddhism 101, what we're going to talk about today is the Four Noble Truths. But before that, we're going to do a few other things. And so I'm going to give you a sort of quick overview of today's agenda. After I give instructions, we'll be doing a short 10-minute meditation. And I'll be giving you instructions shortly on that. And then after the meditation, we'll do a short Dharma talk, which is where I will talk to you about the Four Noble Truths. And then a little bit of discussion afterwards, questions you may have. If you have questions about the talk, fantastic. If you have questions about other topics that are related to Buddhism, feel free to bring them up. Okay? Meditation. So during our 10-minute meditation, they're usually one of three techniques that I recommend. If you already have a meditation practice and you are comfortable with it, feel free to do your own thing. And if you want to try something new, or if you're new to meditation, then these three techniques seem to be very good introductory techniques. The first technique is to simply focus on the sensation of breathing. How does it feel to breathe in? How does it feel to breathe out? Feelings on your nose, your lips, the back of your throat, your lungs, your diaphragm. Really pay attention to how it feels to breathe. And just follow the breath for the full 10 minutes. The second technique is to count your breaths. And so count them up to 10, and when you get to 10, start over again with 1. If you lose count along the way, if you get distracted by one of your thoughts, then you start again with 1 and just keep counting to 10. And you keep repeating that over and over again. The third technique is to repeat a mantra, a gatha, a word or phrase or sound that you repeat over and over again. And you synchronize it to your breath. All three techniques have some sort of aid in focusing on the breath. And the reason we do this is because you carry your breath with you wherever you go. And so if your meditation practice is dependent on guided meditations from the Calm app or hearing Matthew McConaughey help you fall asleep, those are good things, but then your meditation practice is dependent on Matthew McConaughey. If you depend on having certain music, certain incense, certain candles, certain smells, right, certain bells, then your practice becomes dependent on those. And it's okay to have them. They're good aids. They're good to use because they help prepare you. But when you make the breath the focus of your meditation, you carry that with you everywhere. And if you can't breathe, you have bigger problems. So focusing on the breath, learning to follow the breath, is a very central component to a meditation practice, because that's something you can carry with you everywhere. To the point that if you don't even have time to meditate and all you have time is to take a deep breath, that one cleansing breath can be such a relief in moments of high stress. So focus on the breath. It will be boring. Our minds are used to having distractions, are used to YouTube and sound bites, Twitter, even the news has had to shorten its presentations because our attention span is not that long anymore. And so it will be boring. But what I tell everyone is, no one's ever died of boredom. You'll have kids who say, I'm dying of boredom, but they've never actually died of boredom. You won't die of boredom. In fact, part of the practice of meditation will be learning how to push through that need for distraction, how to push through the boredom so that it no longer controls you, but you control it. So when you get bored, when you get distracted by thoughts that arise in your mind or emotions, a few things you can do. One is to simply observe the thoughts and emotions the way you would observe a movie. So create some distance between yourself and the idea and just observe it. Watch what it does. Don't engage in it. Let it arise and let it fall away. I use imagery. I use the imagery of a wave crashing on the shores, and if I just let it, the waters would just go back into the ocean. And so I use that image to remind myself to allow the thoughts to come and allow them to go. Don't hold on to them. Don't engage them. Just allow them to be. Don't judge them. That's the other thing. If you have a thought, no matter how inappropriate you may think that thought is outside of meditation, within meditation, it's just a thought. Neither good nor bad. It's just a thought. And allow it to return back into your consciousness. In terms of sitting, you want to be in a position that you're comfortable enough that you don't fall asleep, but not comfortable enough that you can sit in that position, but not so comfortable that you fall asleep. All right. Be mindful of any pressure points, and so I tend to use a half lotus position, which is where one foot over the other. There are people who do the full lotus where they put both feet up, which I haven't been able to do since I was 5 years old. And then other people just cross their legs. So just be mindful of what positions work for you, and then make adjustments as necessary. If you need to move during the meditation, feel free to do so. Try to do so quietly. But don't torture yourself during meditation, especially when you're first starting to practice. You don't want this to be an unpleasant experience. And so find what's comfortable and continue to practice. After then, the 10 minutes of meditation, we'll do the Dharma talk. And as I mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about a very basic teaching, a fundamental teaching. It is often said that the teachings of the Four Noble Truths is the basis of all of the 40 some years of teaching that the Buddha engaged in after his enlightenment. That everything relates back to these Four Noble Truths. And so we'll introduce them tonight. And then for the next few months, we'll take one and focus on them more closely. All right, so get in a comfortable position. I will ring the bell shortly, and we'll do 10 minutes of meditation as soon as this gentleman comes in and takes a seat. Perfect timing. We're just waiting for you. Now we can start. So we're about to start our meditation, so actually good timing. All right, take a deep breath. Settle in. Focus on your breath. some time to stretch, massage any parts of your body may have fallen asleep. The Four Noble Truths. Today I want to just give a broad overview of the Four Noble Truths. And I want to talk a little bit first about sort of the history that led up to the Four Noble Truths. At the time, Siddhartha Gautama, which was the name of the Buddha during his ascetic years, had spent a lot of time with 5 other ascetics, and they were experimenting with forms of meditation that required extreme restrictions, extreme deprivations. I mean, there was a point there where the Buddha was living off of only 1 grain of rice a day. Yeah, pretty extreme. They would purposely sleep on uncomfortable rocks. They would purposely do things that would make their bodies uncomfortable because they believed at the time that that was the way towards greater wisdom and greater understanding. And at one point, Siddhartha Gautama realized this just isn't working. And he went off. He left the 5 other ascetics behind. And sat under a tree, a Bodhi tree, in a place, I always forget the name, at Bodh Gaya, which is a modern Indian state of Bihar. And during that time, the legend goes that he said, I am not going to rise from this position until either I've died or I've reached enlightenment. So he's like, this is it. This is where it either happens or it doesn't. And he did. He eventually, there's some beautiful stories around it. I encourage you to look them up. But ultimately what happened was that the Buddha was awakened. And Buddha is a word that means awakened one. So he went from Siddhartha and Gautama to now being addressed in the sutras as the Buddha. There are a few legends surrounding also the enlightenment of the Buddha. One legend is that when he became enlightened, he struggled with how do I even express these insights, this understanding, this awakening to people. One legend says that he told it to a holy man that was on his path, and that the holy man thought he was insane and just laughed at him. Another legend says that the god Brahman showed up to him and begged him, please, Buddha, do not go away from us. Stay here and teach us what you have learned. I wasn't there, so I don't know which one was true. But the consistent theme throughout the different legends is that he struggled with how he was going to teach this and whether he could even teach it. Could he explain it to those of us who have not been enlightened yet? His next step then, in most traditions, what they say is that what he did was he found the 5 ascetics that he had been practicing with, who were still practicing these very extreme practices. And in some stories, the 5 ascetics saw him in the distance and says, oh, there goes Gautama. He's such a failure as an ascetic. I can't believe he gave up. I had such high hopes for him. But that as he approached, they sensed that there was just something different about him. There was something that they were curious to learn about. In some legends, they say he was glowing. In others, it was just something about his smile. But there was just something there about the Buddha, something about his presence that caught their attention. And so they wanted to listen to him. And in his first sermon, he shared the Four Noble Truths. And he did this in a deer park called Isipatana. It's now called Sarnath. Both of these places have locations that are dedicated to these two momentous times in the Buddha's life. So if ever you're curious to go out to India and check them out, or even just Google them, there's some pretty nice pictures and things around there. This first sermon is often called the first turning of the Dharma wheel. So you'll see that you may have seen that wheel-like symbol. Anyone see it anywhere around here? Sort of a wheel-like symbol. Looks like the steering wheel of a ship, but it's actually a symbol of the Dharma wheel. Different spokes, all leading to the center, and that's the Dharma wheel. And so that's the first turning of the Dharma wheel. And he taught then, in life there is suffering, the first noble truth. There is a cause to this suffering, and that is our cravings. So that's the second noble truth. There is a cure and an end to this suffering. That's the third noble truth. And the cure for that is the Eightfold Path. And so these Eightfold Paths are prescriptions for how to live. Now, I use the word prescription because that's another common analogy you will find when the Buddha and the Four Noble Truths are described. The Buddha is described as a physician. He is diagnosing the problem. In life there is suffering. He is identifying the cause of this diagnosed issue, and that's these suffering is caused by cravings, second noble truth. He gives hope to the ill, to us, and there's an end to that suffering. And then he prescribes the medication, the medicine needed to end the suffering, and that's the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path consists of right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And they're on your sheet right there. And what I'm going to do is, in 1 month, the first Tuesdays of every month is dedicated to a Dharma teaching. So from here on, for the next, 10 months, I will take one of these points and discuss them. So next first Tuesday, I will talk about the first noble truth. And then we'll do that with the second, the third, and then the 8. We'll take each of the 8 noble path individually as well. There was another teaching along with this first sermon, and it's actually a very important part and relates to the question I asked to you earlier. Along with the 4 noble truths, the Buddha in his first sermon also talked about the middle way. The middle way. It's this idea that when we go to too far extremes, we suffer. We don't find the truth. But when we go the middle way, that's where we feel the balance, the peace, a reduction in the suffering, a clarity of mind. The Buddha once told this story. or at least the story is attributed to the Buddha. A musician once went to the Buddha, and he used to play a sitar, which is like a zither. Let's just say a guitar. So he was playing a stringed instrument that was like a guitar. And the musician went to the Buddha and asked him, Lord Buddha, what do I need to do to be happy? So customarily in this story, there's a long pause, and then the Buddha finally speaks. And he asked the musician, tell me, what happens if you tighten the strings too much on your instrument? The musician thought, well, the pitch gets higher, it becomes more shrill, and if you tighten it enough, the strings break. The Buddha liked the answer, then asked him the next question. And what happens if you loosen the strings too much? The musician said, well, if you loosen them too much, the strings become all kind of loose and floppy, and they don't make any sound, or you can't make music. The Buddha then responded, such is the practice. Too tight, too high strung, or not enough tension, and you won't find what you're looking for. But when the strings are tuned just right, then you can make beautiful music. The most common place where I see the failure of the middle way is when people who are practicing either set too high a goal, tightening the string too much, or not a challenging enough goal in their practice. The more successful of you will be those who find the middle way, who don't give in to the temptation of I must achieve, because our society is very achievement oriented. So instead of I must achieve 45 minutes every day on the cushion meditating, be more realistic. What do you think you can do right now? Is it 10 minutes? Is it 5 minutes? Is it just taking 3 deep mindful breaths? Have I been practicing a while and can I do 15 minutes now? Or if I've been doing 15 minutes before, can I now do 20? The idea is that you want to find something that's just challenging enough to push you further in your practice, but not so challenging that you stop practicing altogether, that you give up even trying because it was just too hard to do. Don't expect yourself to get it right the first time. That's the high strung, that's the tightened strings, overly tightened strings. I can never get it right. I can't stop thinking. I can't relax. I get too bored. All those judgmental thoughts that come to your mind are like tightening the string until you break and you stop practicing. Find the middle way. And this is the lesson we learn from the Buddha's life, where he realized sleeping on rocks and living off of 1 grain of rice a day was too extreme. But living the life of a luxury, he was a prince, if you didn't know. Living that life of luxury, the princely life, was not challenging enough for his practice. So he found the middle way. I asked you before we started, think of a time when you went to an extreme and it was not helpful or healthy. And so as you drive home today, think of what would the middle way have been in that situation? What would have been the healthier way? Not necessarily giving up on my values or what I believed, but not necessarily holding on so tightly that it caused me suffering. What was, or could have been, my middle way? Time and time again, when I reflect on where I fail, I find that I have not found the middle way. That I'm either too extreme. Oh, I'm the teacher of this Buddhism 101. I should be doing all this. And so I have all these should statements in my head that don't help. But no, I don't feel like doing it. It's the opposite end. And that doesn't help either. Find the middle way, and your practice will grow. All right, I'll stop there. The middle way is a very important thing to keep in mind as we start learning about the next, the first Noble Truth in a month, and then each subsequent Noble Truth for the next 10 to 11 months. In 2 weeks, though, we'll have a parable or some sort of Buddhist story. So the third Tuesday of every month, we dedicate it to some parable. All right? And we try to find a parable or a story that supports the teachings from the first Tuesday of that month. So we'll try to find a story on the middle way. Good. In the time we have left, thoughts, comments, insights, feelings. What arose in you as you thought about the Noble Truth or the middle way?
I think I was relieved. I felt a sense of relief because I thought, I guess my preconceived notion of Buddhism was that you had to come in and like give up everything and be completely like you described Buddha in the story, like starve yourself, and you can't be enlightened until you do those things. And so it's reassuring to know that there's a middle ground.
Thank you. Very important words. Thank you.
How is suffering defined or understood?
Ooh, great question. And we'll talk about that in a month. I can give you a sneak peek, though. Suffering is actually a poor translation of the word dukkha. And so it's in life there is dukkha. And dukkha incorporates a little bit of suffering, but also craving, longing, dissatisfaction, sort of a combination of all those things. That part of you that feels like, I'm not happy with life. There has to be something more. That's the dissatisfaction. Suffering, I think, is easy I usually use the word suffering because it's an easier word for us to identify in our daily lives. Right? Longing, reaching. I wish I had that. I want that. I don't have that. A craving. So that is another source of suffering. Dukkha. So suffering is an incomplete word. It's not wrong. It just doesn't capture dukkha in its entirety. And I'll promise I'll give you more in a month. So you have to come back.
What exactly would you say is the goal of meditation?
Oh. I think that would be a good answer to get from all three of us. So I'll give you mine. And then I invite everyone else to speak. Meditation is a tool. In the same way you don't live in your hammer, you use the hammer to build the home. Meditation is a tool. The end goal isn't to be the perfect meditator. The goal is to use meditation to achieve greater concentration, greater enlightenment, greater focus, greater mindfulness, greater sense of self-awareness. So meditation is just a tool, and in the same way you don't live in your tool, you learn to use that tool for a greater goal. Master, would you want to share your thoughts on my imperfect answer?
Sure, you have 30 minutes.
It is a hard question to answer.
Do you breathe? Do you smile? Do you get angry? Why?
People and life in general can give you those kinds of reactions.
Why?
Like, why do I smile? Why do I get angry?
Yeah.
Life in general, things that it throws at you. I mean, like,
No. It's too general. Think deeper.
think deeper.
Yeah.
Like a situation.
Like, someone caused you to be angry. Why did you become angry? Don't think about the specifics of what they did. But if you were to become angry, why did you allow yourself to become angry?
Because I don't have control.
Exactly. Meditation gives you that control. I have control. We hear the term, we're master of our own mind. That's what they say. Right? The master of your own mind. That's not true, obviously. If you were the master of your own mind, you'd be able to control not being angry. So meditation actually does allow you to become master of your own mind. Otherwise, if you were the master, then nothing would upset you. Nothing would cause you distress. Nothing would cause anxiety. Always be happy. Always be smart. No, we're not. We're imperfect people. We don't have the wisdom to allow us to control ourselves within those difficult situations. So by meditating and by learning to observe your mind, why you feel these things, why did you allow those things to arise, right? And get to the core reason of the true root cause of the anger, right? Because I teach a meditation method called why meditation. Why meditation, right? So whenever something arises, whether anger, ask yourself why. Oh, because they insulted me. Why did they insult me? Because maybe they're having a bad day, maybe I'm having a bad day. Whatever it is, right? But you keep asking yourself why, until you get to the true core reason, root cause of the situation. Once you have the root cause, now you have something tangible you can do something with, right? It's not just, oh, I don't know, life in general. Life in general's not an answer. Right? But once you have a root cause of something, now you have something that's graspable, that you can do something with, right? And so whether that root reason or root cause is a specific person, right? If it is a specific person, now you're like, okay, this person's causing me suffering. And whatever type of suffering falls under. But you know it's this person that's causing you these issues. So now you know, because you know that, you can do something about it. You can either unfriend them, you can distance yourself from them, maybe you have to change the relationship type, maybe you have to change the frequency you see them, whatever it may be, right? You only know the answer. But at least now you have the reason, and you have something to do with it. Now you have one thing eliminated out of your stressful life. So the more you meditate, the more you create or locate and be able to grasp those root reasons and take those roots out, now you have a clean garden. Right? You have nothing to stress you. You have nothing to cause you pain, nothing to cause you suffering. And so we use meditation to not just to calm ourselves, right? If you want that kind of crap, then that's not true meditation. Those are the byproducts of meditation, is to de-stress, to lessen anxiety, all those other things. Those are byproducts that will naturally come through meditation anyway. But that's not the reason for a true meditation practice. And so once you start to observe your mind, so that's the entire practice of Buddhism, is to learn how your mind works, right? Buddhism is Sometimes, right? It can be. Your mind has this problem with being present, right? Because your mind is obsessed with past and it's obsessed with the future, right? Because those are the two things it can control. It can control what you think about your past, it can control the anxieties that the past gave you, and it can control the future anxieties as well, right? Those are the two things it has total control over. But it does not have control over the present. Because present hasn't happened yet. It's the present, right? So your mind is like, no, let's go back 3 years ago to that one boyfriend or girlfriend that broke his heart and we're still mad about it, right? Or let me think about the 2 years from now when I graduate college and what I do with my life, right? It's not bad to think of the future, obviously, but to take it away from the present moment is what your mind is trying to do. So you constantly drag it back into the present moment. Easier said than done, but that's when we have exercises, that's when we have the breathing meditations, the mantras, whatever it is, right? These are the tools that help anchor your mind so it's not wandering constantly.
It's not wrong to use the Calm app. It's not wrong to listen to Matthew McConaughey to help you as you meditate. Those are great ways to get started. That's the string maybe for you of the right level of what you need. So maybe just focusing on the breath is too hard right now. So having guided meditations can be very helpful. But always keep in the back of your mind, I want to get to a point in my meditation practice where I'm not dependent on, a certain voice, a certain app, a certain ritual. But if you need those things, if that's where you're at, be honest with yourself, and that's where you start. That's where I started. Ask that question again to other master meditators or people who meditate a lot, and you'll get a different answer again. Just like you got 3 different answers here. It's a really big question. So each person will sort of emphasize, kind of like a Rorschach. It tells you a little bit about them.
It's beyond words, really.
Yeah, it's hard to describe, or it takes 30 hours to describe it. Ask the question to other people, and I think that kind of question helps gather more clues. If you ever, and this goes for any sort of teaching, if you ever find someone who says, I know the answer,
Run.
yeah. So if ever you find a Buddhist that says, I know what Buddha said exactly, and this is what it is, run. Because it's not, even the Buddha himself said, question everything I have taught you. He doesn't want any of us to take any of his words just on blind faith. He wants us to struggle with it, to wrestle with it, to chew on it, gnaw on it, really savor it, and make it our own. So eventually get to the point where you can answer for yourself, what is meditation? Okay? Any other questions, thoughts, comments, insights? Abel?
Not arguing against the middle way, because obviously it's worked so long, but was Siddhartha unhappy as a prince? Because he didn't have a choice in that. His dad sheltered him from all the stories I've read. His dad sheltered him so that he wouldn't become a Buddha, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never read that he was unhappy as a prince. I mean, the day he goes out, he sees a sick person, a dying person, and a dead person, and that's when he starts to question. That's when he up and leaves his wife and kid. But he wasn't unhappy. So that versus being aesthetic, yeah, that's a shitty life. And so that's how the middle way happened. But he seemed to be okay as a prince until that one day where he saw what he saw.
What I would say is the word unhappy blocks you. Replace unhappy with dissatisfied. And it makes more sense.
But was he dissatisfied?
Dissatisfied enough that when he saw these things, he questioned.
Well, he questions he'd never seen them before in his life.
That's the legend. But can you really imagine a life where you don't see someone growing old, where someone doesn't just disappear because they died, where you don't have illness Did Prince Siddhartha go his whole life without ever seeing anyone get sick?
Dad sheltered him a lot.
It would be really hard to shelter him like that. So my guess, and this is just my opinion, and again, just an opinion, find your own truth. My guess is that Siddhartha knew of these things beforehand. And it makes for a great story when we say he was sheltered and never seen it before until that one point in his life. And it was so shocking that he questioned everything. I think it's more realistic to think that, like us, he had this general dissatisfaction, this general dukkha. And it came to a head when those things happened to him. And he sought out the answer. He said, this is not enough. This isn't good enough for me. I want the answer. And that's when he went off to be an ascetic. Tried a whole bunch of things. None of them worked. But all of them were important to get him to the point where it finally worked. And I think that's an important part of Buddha's story. That all the things that we label as failures in our lives, the Buddha could have, from certain perspectives, say that he failed at some of these things. But all of those missteps, those studying under a teacher that wasn't good enough, eventually led him to the point where he became awakened. So I think the word unhappy could be replaced with dissatisfied, and it makes more sense.
Did he ever go back to his wife and kid?
Yeah. His son became one of his monks, Rahula. And his wife also eventually practiced in her own way also. And so did, what was it? A lot of people from his family eventually joined him. And if the stories are right, became enlightened themselves.
What comes to mind when you think of the word death? Or do you know if he thought anything of death?
You ask the questions that take like 30 hours to fit.
You could just sum up and like change how much you.
Maybe take the time to talk about the four basic sufferings that we all go through. One of them is death.
Go for it.
Okay, so everyone. Sorry,
8 life sufferings.
8 life sufferings. Let me let you tell me.
No, I'm gonna listen, but you're gonna talk about it. Birth, old age, sickness and death, being away from loved ones, not getting what you want, getting what you don't want, and the what's the opposite of dissatisfaction?
Overindulgence.
Indulgence in the 5 aggregates, 5 sentences.
There's your answer in a nutshell. What do you want to add? Yeah.
Just that death is an event that we all can't escape from. We all go through it. So I think when we talk about the first noble truth, that there is suffering, we often think, am I the only one feeling this? Is this just me? Am I crazy? And so I think by explaining these 4 basic things that causes suffering in our life that we all experience and go through, I think kind of helped tie everyone together. So birth, old age, sickness, and finally death are the 4 things that all humans must go through.
But you don't think anything of after death?
So about 2 months ago, I did an exercise here in this room. And I talked about how when you think about death, you have to ask, death of what? And when you give your answer, well, what is that? And in sort of like the exercise of the whys, keep asking the whats. What is that? What is that? What is that? One perspective is that death is just a label. It doesn't really exist. Just like birth. There's just it's a word that's convenient to mark certain times. But everything that I am will continue when I die. So none of it will cease to exist. The only thing that will change is the organization, but that's already changing right here in front of your eyes. I'm shedding skin cells. My brains are forming new connections. I'm already transforming before your very eyes. It's just the transformation takes a different turn when we die. And death, the definition of death has changed over our history. Death used to be when you stopped breathing. Then death used to be when your heart stopped. Then death used to be, or right now, is when your brain stops. And about a year or so ago, scientists were able to revive pig brain cells that had been dead for over 24 hours. So we're redefining the term death. Same thing with birth. When we were very primitive, birth was when the baby came out. Then birth or life started when the mother became self-aware enough to realize that they had a child within them and could feel the kicking of the baby. And scientists now can tell us life, or at least some of the functions of life, start earlier than that. And I'm sure that if we continue to go further, we'll find that there is no starting point of life. It's a transformation, a continuation, a flow.
So you view it more as like a cycle, would you say?
Process might be a better word. An unfolding. Transformation is a better word, and that's why I used earlier.
A new birth, in a way.
Yeah, it's a new state. But the thing is, right, I'm already in a new state now than I was 10 seconds ago. And so part of it is understanding that we're already in this flow. We have this delusion of permanence that somehow I'm set. I'm Alex. But I'm not the same Alex I was 10 seconds ago. And I will be a different Alex 10 seconds from now. It is a continuous flow and transformation. Okay? And that leads into ideas like reincarnation. It's not like there's a soul that's picked up and plopped into another life. It is a transformation of that consciousness that is part of who we are. More. Energy and more. Yeah. And that's, and it's interesting. That's a really great point, because when you look at what we currently understand of physics, we're starting to see that it's all just a transformation and vibrations, and that there is no such thing as solid matter. It's just that these cells are vibrating so fast that I can't put my finger through it. In the same way that a fan is turning so fast, I can't just stick my hand and stick it back out without getting hit. So that's not solid. It's the delusion of solidness. And this is all part of that same transformation of energy and flow into other states, other ways of being. Right? Big question that has very poor answers up here. It's something, again, you have to sort of struggle with and chew on your own, wrestle with on your own, come up with your own answer. And ask that question to multiple people. And hopefully, each of us and all the answers you get will give you another clue as to the answer that's right for you.
I do have one more question.
Go for it. How about, let me first ask if anyone else has any, and then I'll come back to you. So we'll say, if anyone else have any more questions or insights, or do y'all enjoying these questions? Yeah. They're good questions. Go for it.
I just wanted to know, you don't all have to respond, but if you would like to, you can. What exactly brought you to Buddhism?
All right, let me see if I can give you the short answer. I've been meditating since the age of 12. The form of meditation I engaged in was from the Catholic perspective called contemplative prayer. I came to find out that contemplative prayer was the focus of St. Ignatius of Loyola. And so I followed and studied that theology and philosophy. to the point where I became a Jesuit novice. I was studying to become a Jesuit priest in the Catholic Church. Still dissatisfied. That teacher was not enough for me. And so I left the seminary, continued to explore, continued to seek out answers, came across a book by the Dalai Lama. Started reading other books about Buddhism and became a Barnes & Noble Buddhist. After becoming a Barnes & Noble Buddhist, eventually at some point I found this temple, studied here, then moved to Houston, studied at another temple over there, and then came back here, came back to continue my studies and do some teaching. I have stayed a Buddhist because it works, because it gives me the best answers so far to my questions in life. And it's giving me results. When I can hear from my wife, from my family, that I am a better husband, a better father, a better co-worker, a better man, for me those are signs that it's working for me. And so I continue to deepen my understanding of Buddhism in hopes of being a more authentic, better me, and hopefully one day an enlightened, awakened me.
Would you say that you are still dissatisfied
Yeah,
sometimes?
you don't see a halo. Yeah, I'm not the Buddha.
Are you more satisfied than you were before?
I suffer less. I definitely suffer less, way less. And that's also one of the reasons why I continue to practice. I'm a happier, healthier, more peaceful version of myself than I was a year ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago. And as long as I continue on that trend, I will continue with Buddhism. But the moment Buddhism, I'm open to the possibility that if Buddhism ever stops being that for me, that I will need to seek something else. But for right now, it's what's working for me, and it's working very well. I don't know if anyone else wants to.
Well, with the greatest respect, I think we need to check the clock here. I mean, once again, we're gone a little bit late.
Yeah, sorry.
You know them.
Yeah, sorry. So I think ultimately, like I've ended every other answer, find your answer. If Buddhism works for you, continue pursuing. And that's for all of you. If Buddhism works for you, continue to deepen your understanding. But the moment this form of Buddhism, whether it be mine or Quantri's or Leon's or this temple's form of Buddhism does not work for you, seek the next step. Okay? That's what the Buddha did. He actually went to different teachers before he was finally enlightened. To find your own answer. All right. Announcements. This Saturday we have Meditation 201. Master Quantri, could you please tell us about that opportunity?
Yeah, so we're starting up again. So every second and fourth Saturday, 10 a.m. we have meditation for an hour-ish. Discussion. Sitting and walking meditation. So we'll do that the next 3 months before our retreat, winter retreat in December. Already set a date on that date. I don't know what date it is. Second Saturday of December we'll do our retreats. Yeah, once a while.
Let me see if I can.
A little bit more. Alex would go over reading, but it is still open for all new materials.
So December 10th is the second Saturday.
December 10th will be our winter retreat. Our winter retreat is a full day, so it's from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Almost as fun as it sounds.
That's fantastic. It's a day to spend together, working mindfully, and it's just a fantastic opportunity
Yeah.
to be with each other and with our monastics for the whole day, and to go through the day as if we were monastics. So we will take a special set of what's the word I'm looking for?
Temporary vows.
Temporary vows in the morning, and then we will release those vows at the end of the day. So for that 12-hour period, you will be under the auspices of those vows and conducting yourself thusly. And so it's it's a really great experience to practice and something that, you look back on and go, that was really great. So I definitely recommend you all joining us.
Yeah. So, yeah, this Buddhism 101 is basic, incomplete. There's lots that I leave out because I need to keep it 101. I highly recommend sort of challenging yourself. There's that string image again, a little more tension, and going to these Saturday meditation meetings so you can deepen your understanding of meditation and that practice. Okay. This Sunday will be our usual service, and that's at 12:30. So if you're interested in participating in that service, you can arrive here at 12:30 and join us at the main temple over there. Okay. Other than that, then the next Buddhism 101 meeting will be in 14 days, in 2 weeks. Today is the 6th, and so on the 20th will be our next meeting, and we'll have a parable or story for you. Any last questions on sort of the meetings or things like that? No? All right. So if you'll join me to sort of share the merit. The idea is that we've done good work here. And so we want to share it not only produce good works within us, more fruits within us as we go on from here, but also may this also produce good merit, good fruit, good deeds to all those around us. May any merit that we have accrued by sharing the Dharma here tonight bring us and those in our lives and those around us happiness, joy, safety, health, and peace. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your week. Take care, everyone. Wait, there's still a recording going on. Unless you want your answer to be broadcasted all over Facebook.